Ladies, gentlemen, and destined ones of all ages, now that the dust has settled a little bit and people have had the time to properly digest Black Myth Wukong for the lovely game that it is, most people have finished the story at this point or even possibly dived into second playthroughs in the New Game Plus cycle system, or even further into multiple New Game Plus cycles, and generally speaking the response from players seems to simply be that we all want more, which is why so many people are engaging with these new cycles. The devs are fully willing to respond to this request as it seems, which is obviously fantastic. Today we have two pretty major things to talk about around the game. The first being a sizable patch that hit the game this past week, and of course what is within it in case you didn't know about it, and then we have some talk about an actual release window for the expansion that was confirmed to be being developed for the game recently, which is looking to be quite a sizable increase to the content that will be in the game. First things first then, the patch itself. This isn't a massive change to the game within itself, but it is a reasonably sized update, and the first thing that I want to point out here is that they actually acknowledge mods for the game and warn you that you may want to uninstall any mods until they can be updated because they won't work with the patch and will make your game non-functional. And to me, that seems like just saying, hey, by the way, we know that mods exist, we are okay with mods, but be aware of this one thing. And I'd love when a dev is at least openly accepting that mods exist for their game, if not full-on supporting mods. Moving on to the changes then, a number of bug fixes, including the game crashing during certain fights, exclusively with the Turkish Windows system language set, which is a sort of hilariously specific bug that would affect a specific group of people. Past this, they adjusted the actual fight for the 100-eyed Taoist master, main story boss, and I can understand why they did given how much grief this fight did cause a lot of people who happen to not do the chapter secret area first and work out the trick with the vessel that it gives you. They also fixed a number of other things like combat issues, things like phasing out of invisible walls in certain boss fights, some enemies basically becoming immortal, or even just getting stuck, and some character model issues happening in Chapter 5 too. Then there were a bit of balance changes for the game, which generally seems to be just sort of buffs, which is great aside from fixing some unintended interactions. I love buffs in single player games, so this is really nice to see. This starts off then with the Spike Shaft Staff, now also giving you 30 bonus maximum mana when equipped, which is actually a pretty solid bonus of a buff to give it, considering this is a mid-game staff really. Obviously it won't outdo the endgame staffs or the New Game Plus staffs either, even with this edition, but it does help give it a bit more flavor and a bit more power when it is originally unlocked as well. The Insect Armor set now also increases the duration of medicine on top of its other effects too, and this is a really funky set that most players won't really use because it requires a bit of stockpiling and managing of consumables, but this does make the stockpiling slightly less required, so that may help out a little bit for sure. Then they also increased the window of the Rock Solid Parry when you have the Sound as a Bell Sage talent selected. That narrows the window, and while it was definitely usable even with this beforehand, it never hurts to make it even more comfortable because comfortability is quality of life, and I do love a good rock solid based build personally. Then there was a fix to the Ring of Fire spell, sometimes being permanently active on the player, the actual effect from being inside of it, as well as a fix to the Crash talent in the immobilized section of the skill tree, sometimes just not working properly and being removed after your immobilize ends on an enemy. So honestly, just a couple of unintended interactions ironed out. I wouldn't really call them nerfs, just fixes for things that most players would never have actually been using unintentionally or otherwise. Past that, you can now purchase Fine Gold Thread as an item from the Tiger Blacksmith in the Zodiac Village in New Game Plus cycles. This lets you just upgrade way more of your gear, just a lot more liberally, and they fixed bugs as well that stopped the Frog boss of Chapter 4 from dropping its important rewards on death, the things that will either let you upgrade the Frog Spirit, or will let you unlock a really solid gourd in the Zodiac Village. That pretty much then covers the patch, so let's move on to the generally more exciting news here, which is from this tweet from Daniel Camillo, who is an analyst in the Chinese video game industry that has given some correct information for other games in the past. This is technically a leak, it should be said, so of course it should be taken with a big old grain of salt. Nothing is confirmed completely from this until it is announced by the studio itself. But this relatively reliable source claims that the expansion will release near Chinese New Year, right around the end of January or early February this coming year, 2025. As well, this comes with figures suggesting that more than 20 million units of this game have been sold up to this point, which does line up with the previous numbers before the tweet was made. It is slightly higher and on the same sort of trajectory. As for what the DLC will actually entail, there is long-standing just sort of behind-the-scenes information that the game, the full game, was originally intended to be up to 13 chapters. There is footage of bosses or areas that never made it into the game, and the main reason given was budget constraints. The constraints are now undeniably fully gone in that regard. Obviously, they have made a ton of money on this game, and while the DLC will be coming out relatively soon, the knowledge that there are unused assets that were already created for the game means that this could quite possibly be more sizable than most people would think for something that happens to be releasing so soon after the initial launch of the base game itself. Personally, I think we shouldn't overshoot with our expectations too much here, but given the quality of the base game and the way that it ends with just barely getting access to the Nimbus and how that could be expanded upon, I am just personally incredibly intrigued to see how the developers want to continue this experience for us, how they'd like to give us more without it just feeling like more of the same. And whether that turns out to be a lot of new stuff or just a small amount of it, it's the actual quality of it that matters most as far as I'm concerned. And if I did have an actual concern, something that I'm worried about, it would be the knowledge that they originally wanted 13 chapters in the game and cut 7 of those out from the game that we actually got. And in theory, anything that was cut was done so because it was considered less impactful or important, or honestly even just enjoyable than the things that were kept in the game. Of course, there can be some exceptions like story relevance making things kept that might have been worse, but it's entirely possible if the expansion releases and it is the stuff that they had previously started already making and then had to cut from the game, that it might just be a little bit slightly lower quality than the standard we got from the base game. That said, that's entirely speculation, and of course they would have had a lot of months to actually work on it and a lot more budget to improve it, so I don't even think that's likely by any means, but until we see new gameplay or anything like that, I'm just saying that we should set our expectations in a nice medium place. Don't expect it to be absolutely groundbreaking, but obviously don't expect it to be garbage either, because they made a really good base game, honestly. That just about does it for today then, everyone. A roundup of the recent news surrounding Black Myth Wukong, the patch and what changed within it, and new information revealed about the quite likely upcoming major DLC to come for the game as well. Let me know your own thoughts about any of this down in the comments below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe with the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.